Hey everyone, it's Andrew Schiffman.
Harry Turcotte here. We both worked at MTV in the music and talent department in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, it was a time where music videos, TRL, The Jersey Shore, and the Osbournes ruled the airwaves.
Yes, Andrew, those are some great years. So tune in every week as we catch up with old MTV co-workers, record label execs, VJs, and artists.
I can't wait, Perry. We'll give you insights into meeting superstars before they were superstars and some juicy secrets from that golden age of MTV.
So grab your headphones and get ready to relive the era of music television and the people who shaped a generation.
Welcome to the Music Lounge. We are here without a guest, but we do have a special treat for you guys today.
Today, we have Susan Natoli, who has been our marketing and promo guru for the launch of the podcast and has been instrumental in helping us get the word out to all of our listeners about the show. And we would love to welcome Susan to the podcast today.
Hello,
Welcome, Susan.
Thanks for calling me a special treat. Now that I'm over 50 years old, I'll take whatever compliment I can get.
You don't look it, and I'm sure you don't feel it, so it's just the number.
I feel it internally.
Yeah, but we appreciate all the posting. I feel like bringing Susan in as a kind of a co-host. We've all got our specific roles that we do to get this out. And Perry, why don't we tell everyone why we kind of started this in the beginning? We've really been talking about it for about a year, and then we went silent for about 6 months or so.
So yes, we have been talking about it. The reason I think I brought it back up to you, Andrew, was twofold. One was I had seen a podcast being done by Benjamin Wagner, who was formerly of MTV News, and he was doing his podcast. I think it was called You Hear It First, and sort of an unauthorized version of telling the MTV News story. And I said, why don't we tell the story of MTV Music and Talent Department? I mean, we were there, we were part of it, we were there for a long time. We saw, a lot of things happen during the time that we were there. So we thought there was a lot of great stories there and a lot of great guests we could have. Secondly, the reason we started it was because it was just a great way for us to sort of have content to put out to people in the industry, whether it's on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, keeping us relevant and keeping us in people's minds, and and like I said, giving us an opportunity to reconnect with a lot of the folks that we had worked with in the past. And I think we've kind of achieved that, even in the short amount of time that we've been up and running. I think the response has been great to the podcast. I think, we've had some great guests on. We've got some great guests coming up. And it really, every person we talked to that period of time was such a special period of time for music, for MTV, and for those of us who worked in it.
Yeah, I would emphasize special for everyone's career growth.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I would also add that we are all open for work as well.
Susan, what was your impression of that time at MTV? Because you were in the programming department, not in the music and talent department, but kind of worked hand in hand together. Like a lot of obviously the longer form content that we were producing through that department ended up being programmed by your team.
Right. So when I started at MTV, I started as an intern. I came in as an intern for Kathy Flynn in special events. And I had already graduated from college, so I actually had to enroll in Marymount University in the city to get internship credits.
Wow.
Um, and I I moved to New York City by myself from like this little dairy farm community in upstate New York. I had worked in radio while I was in college, and I wanted to work at K Rock radio in New York, where Howard Stern had the morning show. Um, but I was like, well, I want to work at MTV because then from MTV I could probably go anywhere. And I also didn't really want to work. I wanted to marry a rock star. I shouldn't really be working right now or looking for a job. Why am I working so hard? That was not my plan. But
It still
I
might happen, Susan.
so like I've been DMing Kip Winger on Instagram and he is just not getting back to me. And I don't know who he thinks he is going to get that is
You
a
know
better
what?
than me.
This might be
Why
your calling, doing a podcast, getting yourself out there,
Maybe.
can hook you
why
up
did
with
you
a
not
rock
become
star.
a contestant on Rock of Love with Bret Michaels?
I think at that, well, I don't know if I want to marry Brett Michaels. I love a lot of that. I love hair rock. I love like grunge. I love a lot of like heavy metal, but like I just never really cared for Poison. Just not my band. I think
I get
also
it.
I feel like I don't know if I was still at Viacom when Rock of Love was on air. I might have been living in LA at that time. Actually, in
Okay.
LA, the girls in the LA office married rock stars. So from Kathy Flynn, I joined the temp pool. Now there used to be a temp pool
Right.
many, many years ago. And you were working consistently because you would sub for like an executive assistant that was on vacation for a week. I mean, I knew Hopkins before she worked for Tom because she was a temp in the research department.
Wow.
And I temped all over in ad sales, legal.
But it was an internal temp
Yeah,
pool. It
Sam,
wasn't an
yeah,
agency. It was
it wasn't an
internal.
agency; it was an internal temp pool.
Right.
And I worked standards and practices, and I mean, I got to know everybody because I just bounced around. And then I got a call from okay, a woman that I temped for who went on vacation. She was in ad sales special events, and she said that she knew someone who had a friend that just started in programming at MTV, and he needed an assistant. And at that time, it had been a year, and I was really tired of not of bouncing around, and I wanted to have a staff job. I wanted to have a staff ID card because I don't know if Perry, you might remember the ID cards would say intern or temp, and
Yes.
it just wasn't as uh
Well,
cool.
they said freelance also.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But I just felt like, I felt like just a staff card would be like Americans
Gold card.
back of all like the cards
Right.
of all the ID cards. So I wanted the staff job. So I went to meet with this guy. His name is Paul DeBenedettis, and he was just hired by Judy and Van, and as VP of Program Planning and Scheduling. And I really just walked into his office. I was like, okay, I know everybody here. I've been here for a year. Here's, I can start right away. Here's the extension that I'm sitting at. Call me when you're ready for me to start.
That was the interview.
That was the interview. And I think he was just kind of like, wow, this
I like this girl.
yeah. And then I think it took him a day, and he's like, okay, can you start tomorrow? I was like, yes. So that's how I really ended up in program planning and scheduling. There was a staff position, and I feel like that's where a lot of us during that time in 97, like September 97, where a lot of us went from PAs to staff. Like I remember Robin Katz was one of them. Like I just remember the pages, the magazine
Yeah.
pages, and like in the back of the pages they would have like new hires or promotions or whatever. And I still have that issue saved. And there's so
Wow.
there's so many of us that became staff employees at that time. Stibic, I think, maybe became a staff employee because we started interning together, but he stayed in programming.
Wasn't Jim Shear an intern in that department too?
We had Jim Shear, as an
Right.
intern. We had Tom Cisa, who is still at MTV in on-air promos. I do remember that music videos were getting soft ratings. There was just, back when MTV launched, there were only 5 cable channels.
Right.
But then starting in 95, 96, there was a lot more competition. So videos could not compete with long form programming anymore. In programming, you have to reach a certain audience number to meet ad sales numbers based on what the rate is, what they sold for a commercial to run in a commercial time. And the numbers were soft. So Paul came from USA Network, and he had experience with acquiring movies, shows in syndication, and besides also being very strategic with programming and being competitive, he was bringing this whole new idea of long form to the network. So we weren't really decreasing the video hours. We couldn't do that right away. We had to build up a content library.
Right.
The first goal, whether it be acquisitions, and we were very specific about acquisitions. They had to be movie based, and trying to think of some of the movies that
You wanted to eventize those acquisitions, not what they do now, where they just want them to fill hours.
Yeah.
So and when that decision was made, when Paul came in and you started working for him, and you kind of put out the word to the company that there was eventually going to be more long form programming, what was the reaction from other departments about that, specifically music and talent? Because I would think they would feel like their turf was being taken away from them.
Absolutely. A lot of pushback. Louis Largent left. He went to go work at a label. And not right away. It wasn't immediate. And then Calderon started. And Calderon, was in agreement with Paul in programming and just making more long form content. But still, we want it to be music themed.
Right.
It's not where it is now, where it's ridiculousness. There was a theme to it, it had to be music based content or start, music artists. But I think that, the people that had been there for a long time were very upset because there's it's all about music and the music videos, and we have to curate the music videos, and they were still doing that. It just wasn't 24/7 music videos. And when Brian Graydon came in, now he was the president of entertainment. So everybody reported into Brian Graydon. And under Brian Graydon, you had these reality shows such as the Osbournes, the Newlyweds. This is when I remember ratings were crazy. I mean, an episode of the Osbournes had 10.8, which would be 10.8 million households.
Which was they were competing with network shows with the ratings at that time. Yeah.
Yes. And we had a specific strategy at 10 p.m. We called it the 10 spot. And that's when on Mondays, I think, was Real World or Road Rules, depending on the production cycle. Tuesday might have been Osbournes. Wednesday was Wednesday and Thursday. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I believe, would be when we'd have premieres at 10 o'clock at night. And 10 o'clock at night is, when we wanted our target audience, and that's when they tuned in. And that's also a lot of broadcast networks would premiere something at 9 p.m.
You'd have an open spot.
Open spot would have been at 10. So we're very strategic of where we were going to schedule a lot of these shows. And then it kind of grew from there. I mean, you had News and Docs that developed amazing shows like Cribs.
Right. True Life.
Made.
A lot of great documentary shows.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Artist specific, one-off.
A lot of stunts. a lot of weekend stunts. I mean, we were just monetizing everything that we possibly could. So, say we were in a premiere cycle of The Real World, well, we would do like a halfway there marathon when we're like halfway through the season and
Mhm.
eventize that on the weekend and sell that as a package.
We used to have to give sales decks at the beginning of the
Those are
the
upfront
physical,
decks.
the upfront decks, right? So
Mhm.
we would put those stunts in there.
So, because that's how media buying is done. They're buying a year in advance for their clients. So we put everything together a year in advance. And I mean, at this time, like you were saying, yeah, but Andrew, they might have been Word docs. They were not fancy. This was before there was an integrated marketing team.
Yeah.
There was no integrated marketing team at the time. So like programming would like really put together like these Word docs and break it down by quarter.
And for our audience, how I've come to talk about programming was I think I filled Susan's assistant spot when she got promoted. Wasn't I the next Paul D assistant? 3 years seemed to be the cycle, right?
Susan, I think so. I think it was 3 or 4 years. I can't remember. 3 or 4 years.
Everyone was coming to you. You were like the center of the company with information.
I knew
It was a pretty powerful position, similar to Robin Hopkins and I guess Lorna in the West Coast.
Which by Laura, she's my best friend. I talk to her every day. Like this is how that's how much we talk to each other during the day.
Right.
That like we became best friends, and I have visited her. She lives in Hawaii now. Like I've gone to visit her. Like we still keep in touch because these are people I talk to 20 million times a day. I got promoted because MTV2 needed to have like a full-time programmer because again, that was just music videos that was created to take the heat word Susan heat off of MTV when MTV started to take videos off and plain long form content. But like anything, anything that gets launched eventually has to be monetized. So then we had to start selling MTV2 and creating upfront packages for that. So I took on MTV2 as, leading the programming and scheduling the grids and coming up with the upfront packages and all the stunts and all of that. And, Paul did tell me it was really hard for Paul to promote me because he said that I basically said that I was perfect and it would be really hard to replace me.
That's what he said to me.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
But how many people applied for that role?
I don't know. I think he just hired you because he liked your British accent and he wanted you to record his
voicemail.
Yeah.
Right. But I was already in the system as well. So I was working in the LA office in corporate communications, and I'd been there for about a year and a half. And Lorna and the, Brian's team sat a cubicle over. So I felt like Press and Brian's team worked hand in hand as well. So I became very close with Lorna. And then I think my wife got a promotion. I met her in LA. She was moving back to New York. And at the same time, there was a programming role. And I didn't really know what it was. It just seemed like that was the place I had to be. So she told me, look, why don't you meet with Paul? And I think I interviewed Paul on the webcam from her office.
Oh, the conference room. Oh,
yeah,
remember?
The conference room.
That was big technology back then.
Yeah,
it was.
See each other East Coast, West Coast.
And then I came to New York and interviewed with him. And then, I got that job and started in think like March 2022, 2002.
And so you sat in the pit. So you sat where I sat across, in the, I don't know what, the northwest corner. And then I moved back one.
You're on 25. Yep. Civic was there and G-Rock.
Yep. And I believe I did this to you because this is what I always did for new people. I got up on your desk and started tap dancing your first day.
Maybe, yeah.
I don't know why I did that.
You embarrassed me a lot, but I just got used to it. We were right by the music team as well. And for me, that was cool to see how that team operated. And then after 3 years, which was hard to leave Paul, but there was a job open in the music team as a manager, and it was to report to Emilian, and interviewed for that, got that role, and literally 1 or 3 months after I joined the music team, half the department got fired, and I took on so much responsibility. My career just like elevated immediately. Like I was taking over MTV Hits, I was programming MTV2, 120 Minutes, Headbangers Ball. Kind of, everyone was a backup for someone, so I was a backup for MTV and MTVU. It was, and then I would work for Kathy Flynn during the award shows, which I was kind of used to because I was doing that working in press. I always worked the red carpets. My first week was VH1 Storytellers of the Doors, and I was a massive Doors fan, and that was my first week. And I didn't actually have a kind of a job. It was more like, oh, just come and see how the press team operates. I was just hanging out on the red carpet, and I could feel Jim Morrison in that kind of studio. I had chills the whole time, and that was my first week at MTV Corporate Communications in the LA office.
And now you know why I fly 3,000 miles every year to go hang out at a graveyard
and hang out with Jim. That
was a great time at MTV. You talk about how you were able to go work for Kathy Flynn during the shows. Like we were all able to work on everything.
Whatever you wanted to do, you could bounce around.
You needed the help.
Yeah.
So, the day before, the day of, or a couple of days leading up to, like, we would just be on site, whether it was Radio City or the Metropolitan Opera House. And the same thing with Want to Be a VJ. Like, we're down in the TRL studios, like interviewing all these people that lined up for blocks and blocks in Times Square.
Right.
Spring break. I would go to Cancun and work on spring break. This company would give us cameras and petty cash and send us to Mexico.
You know what I like doing? I liked running Paul's offsites in Santa Barbara. That was luxury beyond luxury.
That was good. That we did the first ones in Montauk. This is going to be.
I did a Montauk.
I did Montauk too.
At Gurney's.
This is going to be me and Andrew talking about who did it better. So the Montauk ones were actually more legendary.
I know. I did one of them. They were pretty. I think it was
rowdy.
The last one. Yeah.
It was the one I went to. The last one that they did. I remember All American Rejects played on the beach for us. Yeah, I didn't have the opportunity to go to any other ones. I don't think, and I like I said, I think I went to the very last one that they did in Montauk.
We've heard a lot about your story, Perry, because we've had a lot of your .com co-workers, Raquel and Sean Francis. But you were definitely there for a lot of my time in the music department.
And I actually started at Viacom, which is what we called it back, or MTV Networks, I guess, in 94. And I was working at VH1 as the assistant to the two directors of production. And I was there with them for, I don't know, a year or two. I left for another job for a very brief amount of time, then came back, and they had just started a celebrity talent department at VH1. So I started working there. And I was there for 3 or 4 years, and that was really cool because, again, it was, we were talent and creative development. So that basically was like, hey, what do we want to do? Let's do this. Okay, let's do it. I mean, it just was like, there was no, what's the budget going to be? And what's this going to be? And what's that going to be? It was just like, oh, we want to do a show every Friday night where we have a celebrity come in and join our host and we watch a movie together. Like, that's what we did. Yeah, it was really cool, actually. And it was 2 years after I left VH1 that I ended up at MTV in what was called MTV Online at the time.
What year was that? When was online established?
So online, I think, was 97, 98, and that included both the website that they had, as well, which was so rudimentary, as well as MTV Radio. And that was all overseen by one person. And then they decided to split them into MTV.com and then MTV Radio. And then at one point, all of the digital platforms, MTV, VH1, Nickelodeon, whatever else there was, all moved to a different building. We were at 770 Broadway. And we were there for a couple of years until they decided that, spinning those off into a separate company wasn't going to work, and they brought us all back into MTV. And that's when I started to report into the folks at the channel rather than just directly into the person who is overseeing digital.
And now 770 Broadway is Meta, by the way.
Yeah. I think so.
Meta office. I think I remember you from VH1 because I was there 96, 97 working in development.
Okay.
Now that you're saying this, I feel like I've read your name on a memo or something, or I've had to call you.
So you talk about being an assistant and being the assistant to the two directors of production. Like, everything went through, and I shared a cubicle with the assistant to the VP of production, who was Jack Sussman, who went on to be the SVP of events and specials at CBS for 25 years. But between the two of us, again, we knew everything that was going on in the company because, everybody had to kind of come through us to get to either Jack or the two directors of production. And it was really great because you got to know everybody, you got to know what people were doing. There's a guy, Mike Simon, who was a producer there, learned how to be a director at VH1. I mean, they just let him start directing things, and he really learned how to be a TV director. And you mentioned Ridiculousness. He's actually the director of Ridiculousness now. But he's also someone I'm working with on a YouTube show. And this is somebody I met 30 years ago at VH1, and we're still working together. And that's the nice part about having been there too.
For you, I feel like since I left, a lot of people that I worked with haven't been extremely helpful in making sure my career growth and where I hope to have landed have been influential. But
a lot of people have left the industry.
Yeah.
And I don't think by choice. I mean, I think by choice just because there just were no options as as we're starting to see now with TV, streaming is doing to television what it did to music all those years ago. There are still some people that have held on, and it's amazing, Tuma at YouTube, Yomi at Apple, great for them. That they're
Justin
still
and
at
Vivo.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Was your position eliminated at the end of your career there, or did you leave?
I left.
Okay.
So I went through that horrible bloodletting 2007. 17 years ago.
Right.
That was when they let go of entire departments.
Yeah.
I remember music marketing was let go at that time.
Music marketing was let go.
Yeah.
MTV2, remember they let go of MTV2 development.
Oh, right. Lou
MTV2,
Stellato.
yeah, Lou, all the production.
Yeah.
And Kathy special events.
Wow. Yeah. I forget that. I was pretty busy and living life in the music team in 2007. That was the peak of my music career over there. Because I was there from 2005 to 2012.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think towards the end of my time there, I kind of shifted to do some VH1 programming. And then 120 Minutes went to just in English. And I was like, oh, shit, there you go. And then they wanted to move me down to the VH1 floor. And I'd been part of MTV my whole career. I felt like I was getting booted out. And then it got to a point where I was programming only VH1. By Monday morning, I would have the whole week done and I'd have nothing left to do for the whole week. And then I got an opportunity to join a startup that was a music video version of Pandora. So I was like, fuck yeah, like I've got nothing to do here. It was unbelievable. And I wonder what would have happened to my career, where I would have gone if I would have stayed. Like,
so they let go of Paul during that time.
right.
So my boss. So it was like devastated. They let go. I was very close to a lot of people. I was just devastated. My role wasn't affected, but I'm like, how am I going to keep the ratings up at MTV2 if you got rid of my production and development team? Like, I'm already like airing MTV shows that were more male focused, like Wild Boys and Viva La Bam. Like, but you know, because MTV was skewing more female, so I wasn't going to air The Hills on MTV2. So I just felt like, you know, like eventually I was going to get laid off. And I went to go work for John Lack, who created MTV.
Mm-hmm.
And he was starting a new channel that used the same format as MTV, but instead of music videos, they were using really creative ad campaigns like Global.
I remember that. What was the name of that network?
Firebrand.
Okay, I remember. Yep.
Yeah, and it was very, I didn't like working at a startup when you're coming from a big corporation and you have so many resources available to you.
Yeah.
But Doug Rohr was there, and he was a former head of sales at MTV. So I thought I was making the right choice. It wasn't the right choice looking back. Yeah. But after that day, MTV was not going to be the same as it was.
Wasn't the same. I feel like I've been working for startups for 12 years, and basically every year and a half, 2 years, joined a new startup, because that's what startups are. They rarely make it unless they get a lot of funding, and even those ones just, I think, spend their money from lack of experience. But it's crazy how Trisha, who we used to work with, ended up running the programming team.
It's not. That's how you have to leave, and you have to go to different companies and come back to move up the ladder and make more money. There's no way that's going to happen if you stay at the same company
and just get promoted within.
Because, you know, like they have, like HR just has like a limit of how much more money you can get to be promoted within. Like you have to leave.
Sure.
Like she left. She left Viacom completely, and then she came back, and that's how you have to do it. And that's, you know, and I've had to take a lot of risks in taking new jobs to like move up and make more money. And, you know, unfortunately, you know, you don't stay in those positions for maybe 2 or 3 years, and then you get laid off, and then you have to do it all over again. But like, honestly, I don't like that. There's no other way to grow. So,
well, you were at another MTV Networks or Paramount cable channel too, weren't you?
I switched careers, Harry. I sold my soul and I went into ad sales. But not as an account executive, as in integrated marketing. So all the ad sales marketing and all the sponsorships. And Tim Rasta, who was the head of integrated marketing at MTV, loved me. And he moved to LA to become the head of integrated marketing at E. And they were going to hire a freelancer. They just needed so much help responding to RFPs, and E made the most money out of all of NBC Universal's cable stations. And so Tim had me come out and meet with his VP for the freelance role, and I moved to LA to make the switch from programming to integrated marketing. And again, that was 10, 11 years ago. And there were so many integrated marketing jobs on Synopsys back then. And now, because the advertisers they're not putting a lot of their money in TV anymore. Like there's not a lot of integrated marketing jobs because they're not doing these big marketing campaigns. It's an election year, which affects everything. So I'm hoping in December, like things will change. But
how long were you in Los Angeles?
2 years. 2 years. I live with Lori Teague.
Former MTV
another MTV
person.
and
Yeah.
and it felt like, at first it didn't feel like I was living in LA, because like I would see Tuma was out there for Revolt, Butterman would come out for something, and like we go have drinks with him. Like Brian Layton would be in town for something and go hang out with him. So like at that time I knew so many people from MTV New York office in LA that it softened the blow of moving across the country a little bit. um but then I moved back because I had a family emergency and I needed to be back on the East Coast. And there was a role open for MTV integrated marketing. And I met with a recruiter and she's like, "We want you as a director at Spike." And I'm like, "Spike? MMA? UFC?" But I got the job as director of integrated marketing at Spike. And, yes, I worked on Bellator MMA. Like that was part of the job. I had to go watch grown men beat the shit out of each other. Also worked on big tent poles such as Guys Choice Awards, One Night Only, um, hit shows like Bar Rescue, Lip Sync Battle, and then
Spike was
eventually
cool.
Spike was, yeah,
Spike
you're a
Spike was
dude.
cool back then. Yeah,
I
yeah.
was coming from red
Right.
carpet and be nude,
Events.
and then coming to like Bellator MMA and like
Right.
20 Ways to Die or whatever one of some of these shows were. I'm like, oh my God. But it was good to be back at Viacom. I mean, this was 2015, so like it was, a lot of networks were still in place and departments were still in place, and then slowly, with the merge with CBS, that finally happened. And I was there at Viacom when they were going to merge with CBS, like back in whatever, what was it, 2000?
Absolutely.
And then the
Well,
Super Bowl happened.
they did merge with CBS, and then they went into two separate companies again.
Because the Super Bowl, wasn't it because of the Super Bowl?
It may have been.
So the Super Bowl. Okay. So those of us that didn't go to the actual Super Bowl to work on the show, we all went to Kevin Wright's house. Kevin Wright was having a big Super Bowl party, and we're watching. Okay, so now it's time for the MTV halftime show. We're watching Janet Jackson and watching and Justin Timberlake. He's like, "Gonna have you naked" at the end of this song, and pulls off her bra and she grabs her boob, and we're sitting there, and we're just like, "Huh." Well, that was weird. And then we just go back to like maybe drinking, whatever, blah, blah, blah. We didn't even think twice about it. Go into work the next day. And it was like somebody had committed murder. Like there was no music playing. All the TVs were turned off. Everybody was whispering. I remember the IT guys coming into our office and they're like, "Hey, we need to check your computer for viruses. We got to just scan your computer." I think that's what they said or something along those lines. But what they were doing is they were looking for any type of information
Right.
Yeah.
pertaining to like, somebody approving this, somebody knew about it. Like nobody knew about it. And I feel like that's kind of when the vibe changed at MTV.
Maybe.
It changed a little bit. It came a little more corporate and less like MTV creative indie.
Well, there was definitely for a good 6 months, if not a year after that event, I think everyone was like, we want to develop programming, but we can't go too far. We want to make sure that we're not going to offend anybody or get MTV or MTV networks in trouble with things. It was definitely a time when you kind of were, everyone's really cautious about what they were doing.
Yes, less risks.
Yeah.
Taken.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Why the heck do we bring that up? What were we talking about? Oh, okay. So yeah. So then I was back. So I went back to Viacom from 2015 to 2020 in an integrated marketing role. Then they merged with Viacom CBS, and then again there was a whole reorg, restructure, and it was the same thing as what had happened at MTV in 2007. You're just watching departments, just being decimated. Like, okay, like no more Spike Sports. So all the people on that department, including Gil Colon, who's old school MTV production, got laid off. And like one of the fun things for me was like going back and working with my favorite people that I worked with at MTV. So that was a bummer. And I remember thinking like, oh God, like this is happening again. Like, we have to do this again. And now it's happening again and again.
Yep.
I mean, I knew people that recently got laid off at Paramount, people that were still there, or maybe they went back. And it's just so hard to watch, because these people are your friends, and watching a company slowly be broken down, and be ready to be sold to someone else, and just a company you dedicated your life to. I mean, we didn't just work there 24/7. Like, we were out with each other on the
Right.
weekends.
It became family you were with,
Yeah.
So with all of this going on in the media business, and corporate sort of consolidation and companies being bought by bigger companies, what do you think is the future of cable television, specifically, uh, Paramount's current cable networks such as VH1, MTV, Comedy Central, BET?
Well, there's a few things happening. Number one, the pandemic was a major disruptor. We all know that cable was struggling to keep up with streaming services, and I think the pandemic kind of sped up the demise of cable. I think, like, if it wasn't for the pandemic, cable could have stretched out for maybe another, like, 5, 7, 10 years. So there's that. The writer's strike that happened in LA last year. I shouldn't say in LA, just the writer's strike that happened affected advertisers as well.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of big advertisers, like automotive, um, and I'm saying automotive because that happened to me with Us Weekly, like, big automotive advertiser, like, they weren't doing a huge creative marketing campaign this year because their sales were affected by the writer's strike. So now you don't have, and also advertisers aren't putting their money into cable TV or broadcast TV anymore,
Right.
unless live sports, because people are watching live sports. We proved that with the Olympics over this summer, and football,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's all these bidding wars that are happening between streaming and TV. So NBC just spent so much money acquiring the NBA that they have no money left to develop content.
Right.
So now they're trying to figure out, like, okay, now what are we doing, how, to fill in our schedule? Like, so that's something they have to figure out. Netflix, was it Netflix and Amazon? I think I got some of my streamers correct, are now airing some NFL shows.
Yes.
Like,
Apple TV is also.
that's nuts. That to me is so nuts, because the NFL is like the golden ticket in American sports.
Right.
So, like that, we're going to see, like, okay, how is that going to affect viewership? I know the NFL is starting to add more international games
Yes.
to their schedule, but it's not, I don't think there are any games on CBS anymore. I'm not quite sure about ESPN, but like that, they're taking a hit.
So ESPN, I still think, has Monday Night Football. CBS and Fox have weekend games.
They have weekend
Apple
games.
has, I think, a Saturday night game. NBC has a Sunday night game, and Amazon has a Thursday night game. And then I forget
That's
what
nuts.
Netflix has. But that was a huge announcement from them a few months ago that they were going into live sports program, and they really kind of kicked that off with the roast that they did with Tom Brady with the live stuff. I believe that was live. I'm not sure,
It
but
was
I think it
live.
was.
It
Yeah.
was live. Um, See,
I don't
because
watch any sports, so I'm like,
I haven't watched
but
NFL football in a year or whatever, because Tom was my guy.
yeah.
So now I'm like, I have to find somebody else to become obsessed with. But there
But
hasn't
when
been
you
a
look back at MTV and how far forward they were and sometimes ahead of the rest of the industry, and we launched VOD, right? So that was almost one of the first, that was almost a streaming platform, right? So and the way that music was now streaming on demand with YouTube and Vivo, viewer habits change, right? So I feel like now every network has its own streaming platform. I like Paramount Plus and Peacock, and I have all of them, right? And but I feel like viewing habits now have gone kind of a 360, because now these series that a few years ago were just dumping a whole season, now they're appointment viewing. So episodes launch at a certain time every day, which is nice. I like that.
That's HBO's strategy.
Yeah.
HBO always.
Well, Apple does the same thing.
But Apple followed them, and now Disney Plus is following
Gotcha.
that.
Yes.
Now
Yeah.
Netflix has been.
Hulu does it also with Only Murders in the Building.
Okay.
They should all do it, because it creates an event, and no one doesn't want to watch the episode because the next day TMZ, all your friends, everyone's talking about it, right? So
I don't want to binge watch anything.
Yeah.
I'd rather have it so they drop an episode, and then I could talk to all of my friends about what happened and speculate.
And you're excited for the next week.
Yeah. What do you think? Especially with Game of Thrones, like back when the early days and stuff, like that was the best part.
Yeah. Agreed.
But I think that someone is going to come along and consolidate all the streaming services.
We have to, because I forget what I'm watching on what channel.
There's too much, and I feel like there is a need for curation, which is what MTV did with music videos and with artists. Like, anybody can launch content now, and there's just so much, especially, I don't think we brought up YouTube yet. YouTube.
Yeah.
I mean, all the content that's on YouTube, like that's a huge destination for like younger generations to go on.
Well, I mean, even beyond that is like TikTok,
Yeah.
I
mean,
we should get into platforms on another episode.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
Maybe we get Paul on an episode. We could talk about it. But I think that, I think at some point, look, corporations have to just show growth to their shareholders. That's it. So the way they show growth is to just have income be higher than money going out.
Right.
And that's by eliminating jobs.
Yeah.
And then they eliminate jobs, and then eventually they have to hire these people back because somebody's got to do this job. And that's just the name of the game if you're working in corporate.
So to leave it on a kind of a more upbeat or fun note, one of the thoughts I had since we're creating these video playlists is for us to talk about one or two of our favorite or most memorable videos from our time at MTV. I will start with one of them. The one video I remember seeing and just thinking this is the coolest thing was the Justice video for DANCE, where it was just all these quick cuts of their t-shirts changing and stuff. I just thought, and I love the song too, but I think I liked the song as much as I did because the video was so great and it was really impactful for me.
What year was that?
It was probably 06, 07, 08-ish. Yeah. So, and then, I'd be curious to see what you guys have to say about yours.
Well,
Oasis.
Yeah. What when I really got into the music video programming at MTV, I really loved to create themed playlists. So I was doing like playlists from across the pond, best animated videos, black and white videos. We had a few videos which is actually featured in Lisa DeLuca's playlist with Mute Math that were videos shot in reverse, and Coldplay did one. But I think for me, what really broke the ice was when Gorillaz came out, and those really kind of cool animated videos to a mix of alternative and hip hop, which was basically everything I love personally. So I'll go with a traditional Gorillaz Clint Eastwood video, but all of them were good. I mean, Silo was good. Nice.
Susan?
My favorite music video was I think the only music video that was banned by MTV.
Madonna?
No, it was Smack My Bitch Up by The Prodigy.
Oh.
And I remember like everybody talking about. I was like, how do I see this video? How do I see this video? Kevin Hershey had it on VHS. And he let me come into his office, and I had to shut the door so nobody could like walk in and see it. And he let me watch it. And I was like, okay. Like, I didn't think it was like that bad or like that salacious until the end. And then it reveals like that, because it's shot like point of view, and you're seeing these hands out that are grabbing people, or maybe there is I forgot, there is one part in the video where you see them shoot up heroin.
Oh,
and
shit.
There was a lot of sensitivity.
We'll have to find that video and put it in
they go
playlist.
to like there's a scene where like this person's wasted and they throw up on the ground. You see the throw up on the ground, and then they go to a titty bar and she's grabbing titties, he's grabbing titties, and then like the person goes back home and sits on the bed and then looks in a mirror, and he takes off their clothes and looks in a mirror, and you see that the person that was doing this was a female.
I see why you like that video. So
I just was like, I like anything that
as
pushes
So,
me up like
titties
that.
and drugs.
I have two more to add to this so that we can round it out to 5. One of the most innovative videos I think that I saw during my time at MTV was by an artist who, well, all of her videos were pretty innovative, but Work It by Missy Elliott. And also, I'm going to say the Cry Me a River by Justin Timberlake, just because of what it represented when it came out. Everyone knew the song was coming, but we didn't know how he was going to visually represent his breakup with Britney, and how he was going to, at the time, basically say that she's the one that cheated on him, which I'm not sure if that's really the full story or not, based on what was in her biography. But I just remember that video being something that everybody was kind of waiting for when it came out.
I like that.
All right.
I'm going to save another one. I think we should come with a few favorite videos every time we do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But this was good, getting to know. And I think this will be a fun way moving forward to ramble and just see where we're at. We'll have a few more current stories of what we're up to, which I think could be interesting for some of our hundreds of listeners.
Absolutely.
Now,
Next episodes, I'll talk more about all the amazing parties, because that was my specialty.
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear that.
I have one written down that you were involved in, Susan, so we'll save that.
Oh, boy.
All right, guys. This was fun.
Thank you, Susan, for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for
We'll
having
talk to
me.
you guys soon. All right, then. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for joining us today in the Music Lounge.
And tune in next week to hear more stories about your favorite era of MTV.